Welcome to the Massacre Matinee.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the matinee, Kate.
Welcome back.
It's part 2 of the Pizza Bomber case.
Yeah.
Because it was just too juicy.
And we ran out of time.
I don't want to make these episodes too long.
No.
I can't sit I do love listening to some true crime stuff, but I can't always sit there and like commit 2.5 hours.
We're
or
too
something
ADHD
like
to sit in one fucking spot for this long.
How
do we do our job?
Because it's not always the same job sometimes.
That's true.
And because we're usually listening to something that appeals to the ADHD. You are probably going to hear traffic in the background today because it's fucking nice.
For
My
once.
door is open. Deal with it.
It's not going to be nice for long.
It's not.
Looked at the weather and it was gross. We live in an area where we get snow like really early on. Like I was looking at my timeline this time last year, we had like 3 feet of snow already.
No bullshit.
So I'm kind of glad. I'm a hunter. I hope we have like at least a 2-inch dusting of snow.
Something. It
Just
makes
to
it
make
easier
it-
to
mhm.
track, honestly.
Oh yeah. Makes it easier to see them too.
Right. So, at part 1 we left off with PNC Bank being the
Mhm.
bank that got Marge all pissy. How convenient about
Oh,
the safety
whoa.
deposit box. And I do want to make a quick correction on part 1. I said that Marge wanted to move to Muncie to be closer to a lawyer. That was not true, and I apologize. She wanted to be moved away from Muncie because her lawyer did not want to travel to Muncie.
Fuck Muncie, I guess.
Right. I also did want to bring up real briefly, because I was doing some like extra research and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I found a video on YouTube. I'm not gonna call it out necessarily.
Oh, is this the one
but-
that you talked to me about?
Yeah, there's a 45-minute video on YouTube that talks about this case that I wanted to bring up just briefly
Mm-hmm.
because I don't feel like it's factual at all. They tried to say that this bombing was a copycat to the Saw movies, but the first Saw movie came out in 2004.
See,
I would sooner believe that maybe the Saw movies had some, well, not even, they couldn't have had that much, really, because the first Saw movie was just filmed in a single room by 2 college students and some actors.
was it really?
I'm pretty sure. Or, like, that's where the original concept came from. You can't call this a copycat. I only got 5 minutes into that YouTube video because I could not get past the fact that that was so blatantly, impossibly wrong, and the YouTube comments did call him out on it, or her, I'm not sure. I ain't about to assume no fucking genders in this day and age. But I did want to mention that real briefly, that you really do gotta make sure that if you do any kind of true crime, looking into true crime, you gotta cross-reference your research and try not to find things from just one source. I was actually able to find an autopsy report on Brian, so I did a lot of cross-referencing because I wanted to make sure that I did this justice, you know? We are going to go to August to September, so of 2005. The feds were actually talking to Kenneth Barnes a lot at this point. So in December of 2005, he actually made a claim that there was a pre-robbery meeting the day before the robbery. So on August 2003, he said there was a meeting at Bill's house.
They had an employee meeting.
Yeah. Now, according to him, Rothstein, Neil Armstrong, Stockton Jr., Robert Panetti, Brian Wells, and Kenneth Barnes were all there, according to what Barnes says. Now, there is later a witness brought forward that says that Brian almost, like, ran into him backing out of Bill Rothstein's driveway when he was, like, going by. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I don't know. The thing about this case is there's so much he said. Yeah, he said, she said, for sure. And that's what happened was Deal turned around and called him a liar, and then Barnes was like, well, I'm not a liar, you're a fucking liar, and just he said, she said kind of shit. So between March and May of 2006, the feds searched Barnes' house for various different reasons. One of the main things they were looking for was bomb-making supplies, among other things. Well, he bombed stuff at Brian's house.
Yeah, because he
at
wasn't
this
fucking
point-
making bombs. So.
Yeah, and at this point, I mean, Bill was dead, but he wasn't really suspected necessarily at this point. He was still, as far as the federal investigators' bosses were concerned, they figured Bill was clear. He had nothing to do with the Wells case.
Yeah, I forgot how early on he
died
he died
a year after it happened.
Right, because he was very ill.
And that's, you know, there's some speculation that he knew he was sick the whole time, and there's some speculation otherwise. If you watch the Evil Genius documentary, he went to Bill's house at one point and knocked on the door, and there was no answer, so he was like, oh, I'm gonna go across the street and just kind of record some video. And when he was recording that video, Bill showed up, so he shut off his camera and went to talk to him, and he mentioned specifically, he's like, you know, Bill just kind of sat there for a really fucking long time and didn't get out of the van. I almost wonder if, like, that was the day that the doctor was like, hey, you're terminal, by the way.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of, like, sitting in there, like... Because he did manage to sell his house shortly before he died. In May of 2006, Steele took a ride with federal officers. Steele took the feds for a ride to show them where she was throughout the day of the bombing, because she's like, no, I wasn't in this place, I was in this place, and I had gone shopping that day. Incidentally enough, there was a witness that actually came forward as a result of Geraldo Rivera, he was like a big-time, I believe, Fox News reporter at that time. Big, goofy mustache.
I think so.
So he actually got in contact with a witness that said that he saw Marge driving a gold sedan the wrong way down the road. He said that he saw her eyes, and her eyes just kind of amazed him and stuck in his mind because she just had these really unusual set of eyes kind of thing. He was able to identify Steele by picture, I believe. That a lot of their tying things together seem to be witness statements as far as I can see at this point.
Right. That's weird.
So, and the only place that I found that source of information was through the documentary, and it was sourced from an interview that Geraldo Rivera did with, I believe, an FBI, it was with an FBI agent, and in the middle of that interview, that FBI agent director guy, whatever he was, I can't remember his name, I'm sorry, he actually called Jerry Clark, who was in Erie doing the investigation at the time, and was like, hey, did we talk to this guy? Like, you guys really should talk to this guy, because that witness said that he tried getting in touch with officers. Nobody talked to him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why, like, this whole situation was weird, because, like, you can't tell if the people behind it were just that smart that they knew how to, like, throw the cops for a loop, or if the cops just did not know how to put things together and know who to talk to. But there's also so many people involved that I understand why they didn't know who to really talk to about it, but it's just like...
Well, the thing that one of the investigators did say is that what you know and what you can prove are two different things.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact of the matter is they had a lot of suspicion on a lot of stuff that was probably right, but they couldn't necessarily prove some of it.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Because a lot of it, I think, was just circumstantial evidence, too.
Yes. And, I mean, the only thing that really got Marge on the Roden death was Rothstein's testimony before he died.
Mm-hmm.
That was, like, the main thing that got her on it.
Yeah, because if he didn't say anything, he would have died a year later, and that body still would be in the freezer, probably.
A little more freezer burnt than last episode. Probably. So in July of 2007, the federal grand jury indicted Steele and Barnes for armed bank robbery, conspiracy to commit armed bank robbery, and use of a destructive device in a crime of violence, which are all high-level felonies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Rothstein and Wells were named as unindicted co-conspirators in this because they were both deceased. I mean, obviously,
yeah, you can't charge a dead person.
Exactly. They can't defend themselves, so it's kind of like illegal. So the U.S. Attorney's Office actually unsealed the indictments, and Stockton was not named in this case whatsoever because he got the immunity.
Yeah.
It was Judge McLaughlin that was in charge of a lot of this, and he ordered Deal to undergo, like, extra mental health care and stuff because he's, like, crazy. We can't put her on trial because she's a little bit fucking nuts. She needs some help. We gotta get her some help first.
Right.
And Barnes kind of saw this as an opportunity, so in September of 2008, he pled guilty to conspiracy to commit and the use of a destructive device charges. So he outright pled guilty to those, and it was basically, well, who can get to him first and who can get the better deal first kind of thing.
Right.
So he was like, well, I will tell you every way imaginable. I'll tell you everything, and I'll tell you every way that she was involved, and I'll point the finger. But what I want. And he said, according to Marge, he said that he was doing it to get right with God.
Yeah, I'm sure you just didn't want to go to jail for a long ass time or get killed, you know.
Right, because originally he was sentenced to 45 years in a federal prison, and it was later reduced by half for his testimony again.
I mean, 20 years is still a lot, but it's not nearly enough. Oh, that means, oh shit. He's coming up at the end of his sentence, isn't he? If he's still alive.
He's not.
He's not, okay. I was going to say, if he was still alive, he'd be coming out within the next 2 years.
Right. So, in September of 2009, so almost a year after, Deal was finally ruled competent for trial, but it got delayed. She got cancer.
Oh my god. Karma hit them so fucking hard.
Right. So, originally, she had a surgery to remove cancerous growth on her thyroid in her neck. She healed up from that, but it was later discovered that all kind of stemmed from breast cancer. So in a year after that, in August of 2010, Judge McLaughlin actually read a doctor's report, a medical report that was entered into evidence, basically saying, hey, so Marjorie Deal Armstrong's only going to live for the next, 7 years. Like, she's kind of terminal.
You're on a timeline.
Yeah, so he set the trial date for October 12th of 2010. They got the jury all lined up and picked out. Now, short fucking trial time, I think, because they picked the jury on October 12th, 2010, and November 1st, the jury had their decision. Like, I feel like that's pretty quick for a murder
That's quick
trial.
for how
expansive
much.
and how much. I've been doing this research for longer than this fucking trial.
The Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial lasted longer, and that was just for
and that was for fake abuse.
The fact that it took them 5 years to even get to trial versus the fact that it only took a handful of days.
Right. So the thing about this trial is a lot more witnesses kind of came out. There was some witnesses that were both good and bad for Marge, and there was some witnesses that were both
as there are in
for everything.
A lot of cases.
Exactly. It's all the law is two-sided, I feel.
It's a game of chess.
It really is. So there's one more character in this entire thing that I have not mentioned. Now, this person was a very good friend of Brian, but the problem is, and this person is still around, I don't think she's very reputable in this case.
Like, the person that was least involved was the only one that survived, it seemed.
Well, she was also the youngest.
Oh, yeah. But
so,
are you trying to, say...
This lady's name was Jessica Hoopsick. It still is Jessica Hoopsick. Jessica Hoopsick was Brian's favorite prostitute.
So, I know it takes a really special type of person to be able to do prostitution. I don't hate on prostitution. You gotta do what you gotta do to put food on the table and pay your bills. And some people just generally enjoy it. But you really do have to create, a persona in order to do that, because otherwise, your whole self-worth and, all that kind of shit.
Right. And I think that was a big part of her problem, is around the time that she was doing the prostitution, she was doing a lot of crack. She met Brian through Cocaine Ken. And this lady, she really is the thread that ties everything together. She's that last missing piece of, how did this person know this person?
I think the best way that the documentary really does it, where it's a spider web.
It really is. So the thing about Jessica Hoopsick, like I said, she was Brian's favorite prostitute, and the connection between Kenneth Barnes and Brian Wells comes from Jessica Hoopsick. Because according to some, this is where a little bit of hearsay comes into it. According to Jessica, Brian and Kenneth Barnes had never actually met, but she introduced them. And according to other people, including throughout the course of the investigation, I believe Jerry Clark, the investigator Jerry Clark, said that Brian and Jessica would go over to Kenneth Barnes' house. He had a mattress on the floor up on the second floor. They'd go up there, do the deed. Brian would pay for the doing of the deed, and then she'd go downstairs and get some crack from Ken, and then everybody would be happy. Merry way.
Imagine going over to somebody else's house to have sex with a prostitute.
Imagine finding out throughout the course of that investigation that that was the mattress that Kenneth also slept on. See, the thing about Jessica Hoopsick, okay, there's some juicy shit I found out about Jessica Hoopsick, right? So, let's say that they went over there and they did the deed and they did the crack deal and all that fun stuff. According to Jessica, Brian and Kenneth had never met. And according to Jessica, Kenneth was like, hey, we need a fall guy to be able to rob the bank for this case. She just happened to go over there and heard them talking about it, and Barnes was like, hey, do you know anybody? And she's like, well, I know this guy Brian. He's a pushover. He'll probably do it. And according to Jessica, she got paid $1,500 for giving them Brian's name. And she was able to get some, like, crack right away. She was like, I was high for 3 days, and then I was like, oh, hey, you think you can pay me for giving you his name? And he's like, well,
I can kind of see that being the way that it went down, because she probably was there, like, showing up to go buy more crack, and, like, walked in on, like, them having a little powwow about it or something like that.
Right.
And then they were just like,
why would they have
hey.
a powwow at Barnes's house? Why wouldn't they have it at Rothstein's house? They were always at Rothstein's house. Marge was over there.
Could it have been a phone conversation?
I'm not sure. Maybe it was Barnes talking to somebody else because he was quite the talker.
Could have been him bragging and being like, yeah. Or he was just talking to
That's
anyone
what
that
got him caught in the first place.
It probably was him talking to anyone that he could talk to find out, like, who knew somebody that could just, like, hey, this person's not really special to anybody, so if he goes, then he's not going to be missed, kind of a thing, and, like, looking for that low life.
That's what makes me wonder about some things that I'll bring up in a second. But ultimately, from what Jessica said, she gave up Brian's name, but he was such a nice guy, and he would always help her out, and he would always take him shopping and take care of her and stuff like that. And she was like, I wouldn't want to say I loved him, but I had some feelings for him.
Unless she didn't know the extent that they wanted him to help.
I'm not sure. I mean, if she was fucked up, why would she care?
Yeah, because she could have been high and all that kind of shit and, like, did actually care for Brian, but didn't know exactly the extent that...
I think that there were only 2 people that knew exactly to what extent that was going to go.
And I think they were just trying to get other people that didn't know as much so then they could be the fall people in it.
Right.
And I don't think that they knew that... Because I'm sure if she knew that a bomb was going to be strapped to him, she probably wouldn't have given up his name.
Probably not. But then she would have been... if she knew there was a bomb that was going to be strapped to him, she would have been in the freezer with Roden.
Exactly. So,
by the way, it also came out through Barnes that Roden was supposed to be one of the getaway drivers, and that's why he got killed.
I bet they got into a fight, and he's probably going to be like, I'm going to go tell everybody about this. And then she's just like, in the freezer, bitch.
But the thing is in the whole process of Hoopsick giving everybody Brian's name to be the fall guy, it came out that they told Jessica that it was going to be happening in the second week of August. James Roden died in the second week of August.
They probably had an original date that they were going to do
did. I think they had an original date, and then they had to change it. They had to lie low and let the heat die down and make sure nobody was looking for Roden.
I bet he was going to fucking spring. Like, you know damn well that he was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be a part of this. Like,
yeah, because everybody,
I'm going to leave. I'm going to go tell the cops.
History on Roden said that he was kind of like a small, not really small and wimpy, but like small and wimpy personality-wise. Like, he wasn't very...
That's sad that he probably finally, like, grew a backbone and then
like,
ended up in a fucking freezer.
He finally grew a backbone and got killed over it, which kind of sucks. But the other thing that also came out in the documentary that I 100% do not believe is at the end of the documentary, on the Evil Genius documentary on Netflix, at the end of it, it says that Jessica gave birth shortly after everything, like the bombing and everything.
Oh no, did they try to say that it was Brian's kid?
They, according to the documentary, they said that the child bears striking resemblance to Brian. Now, the thing is I've done some other research on that, and there is a huge community that is trying to figure out why Brian's son is half black.
This, you know, okay, you know what? You know how much, like, publicity you would get? Like, I have the child of this bombing victim and, like, all this kind of stuff. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, that... I don't believe that. And not just because she's a prostitute, but also the fact that she is a prostitute, and, like, you don't know how... Because it wasn't like she was only sleeping with Brian.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
Yeah, not so much me either. So, November 1st of 2010, after 11 and a half hours of deliberation, she was sentenced to life plus 30 years, and she did ultimately end up getting herself transferred.
Wasn't she moved out of, like, a maximum security to, like, a lower security one? Did I remember?
She was moved from a state prison to a federal prison, so she
Oh, it's the other way
she
around.
actually ended up down in Texas. She died in Texas. At the last update that I found on, like, Where Are They Now? As of roughly October of 2018, Jessica Hoopstick was still getting arrested for prostitution, so who the fuck knows where she is now?
Man, she,
Yeah.
let her do her thing if, like, I mean, let's see, I'm assuming she probably, during that time, would have been 20s, 30s.
Hard to say. I'd put her at, like, maybe late 20s, early 30s.
Like when the bombing happened.
Yeah. So, like, 15 years later, like, almost 50.
Good for her.
I mean...
she is the only one that came out on top with this. Again, the person who was least involved didn't get the karma, you know, other than, you know, the fact that my half-black baby is Brian Wells. It'd be different if she was, you know, of color herself, but no, she's not.
Kenneth Barnes died June of 2019, also in federal prison. He actually said in interviews that he kind of enjoyed being in prison because it was the first time in a long time that he'd been clean. He was trying to just be a better person in there.
I mean, I like when people are like, hey, I'm
on
the straight and narrow now,
said,
but
well, they've got to take care of me and feed me and stuff like that. So he was just kind of like, well, it's free.
I get 3 square meals a day, I got a roof over my head, and I don't have to pay for any of it. Yeah.
And they gave him his medications.
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, he probably is still able to get
everything that I
stuff.
saw on Barnes's death, talking about how he had diabetes, I would imagine that it was probably like age diabetes type sitch. I didn't see a specific reason for. But Stockton Jr., the only one that came out of this with immunity, he died August of 2022, so just last year.
Oh, wow. So he was, like, other than Jessica, he was the last one?
He was the last
major
player in the game, yeah. He died as a free man in Washington State. He moved to Washington State, got married, life around, was trying person kind of thing.
Well, you know what? At
was
least
listed as an accident. He had acute respiratory failure following something, but it was August of 2022, so I mean, maybe it was COVID. Who knows? It was only a year.
You know what? It could have been.
It was only a year ago. It totally makes sense.
Or it could be something like work related that he was doing, or like some kind of incident.
I'm not sure what he would have been doing for work, because I mean, he was older.
I'd say it probably could have been COVID related.
But you know what the craziest thing about all of this is? So Marge died in April of 2017, and her father, who she wanted to have killed, died in 2018. Her father lived until 95 fucking years old.
Oh my god, could you imagine being that father and knowing that your daughter strapped a fucking bomb onto someone's neck to get the money and like had this plan to kill him and all this kind of shit?
According to his interview in the documentary, he basically kind of sort of disowned her a long time ago because he was like, we used to spoil her, probably wasn't a good idea. We bought her all this stuff, so she never really learned the value of $1. She was sort of a little shithead, and that's why I started giving my money away. I mean, his estimated value was $1.8 million at one point, and when he died, he had $100,000. It was just enough to bury him, basically.
Yeah, I don't think he planned on ever giving her money then.
No. He was like, she's not in my will. Joke's on her, she's not in my will.
She did all of that and she wasn't even... Oh my
And she
God.
wasn't even in the will. Exactly. Well, luckily for you, this is actually turning into a kind of short little sweet episode, which I'm okay with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, well, mine, depending on how much more research I get into and more fleshed out, mine might be 2,
We might record yours in one big session, though.
3, I don't know, depends.
2 or 3? How many pages do you have?
This is the longest I've had. I think I'm at 11.
Oh. So be ready for that, because that's going to be the next episode. What's that one going to be on? Let's give a little sneak
Oh
peek.
my God, fucking... Y'all ever hear of the co-ed killer?
We have not heard of the co-ed killer.
Ed Kemper?
Oh, I didn't know him as the co-ed killer. So we're going to do Ed Kemper. Well, we're not going to do Ed Kemper, but...
Well,
The Ed
he's
Kemper
still
case.
alive!
No thanks. We're going to do the Ed Kemper case starting next week and going until question mark, because we won't know.
You know what the
until
fun
it's
thing about
recorded.
the Ed Kemper thing?
One juicy, spicy
One
little
juicy,
detail.
spicy thing. He could technically be a free man next year.
No shit.
Yeah.
Well, that's scary.
Yeah, well, he might do what he's been doing and deny himself parole like he's been, so...
Has he just been choosing not to get paroled?
He kind of flip-flops. Like, in the beginning, he's like, I don't want parole because, like, I need to, like, I don't want
I'm
to
a
be
bad person.
He's like, I don't want to be a part of society, and then, like, he would try to get parole, and then they would be like, well, no, because you're, like, fucked up, and then he, like, the next year that he's eligible for parole, he'd be like, I don't want it, and then, like, he kind of flip-flops between wanting it, not wanting it, and wanting it, and not wanting it. Like, so it's weird, so I wonder.
Interesting. So check it out next week until who knows how long, how many episodes. We'll figure it out. But we will see you guys next week for the start of the Ed Kemper series.
And let us know if you do like the 2-parter kind of cases to where they're more in depth, or if you just kind of like them where they're more of a
Do you want it quick and
recap.
down and dirty, or nice and deep and easy?
We're a couple of freaks.
Oh yeah. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.